If you're scrolling through social media and you happen across a little blue-hatted wizard strolling through green hills, forest and dales, passing rustic windmills, medieval Mediterranean towns, aging stone bridges, and fluffy sheep, it might in fact be the work of Aurumek, the pseudonym of illustrator Simon Hinterman that I may or may not be pronouncing right at all. Aurumek's illustration work isn't a random assortment of landscapes. Rather, they're the fleshing out of a fantasy world called Argenta. But I'll leave any interest that you have in that to Aurumek himself, as he has a Patreon that goes into the lore of this world, and I'll talk about the things that I know, which is basically just illustration. I did at one point know the original 150 Pokemon, but now I have forgotten, so it's all pretty much illustration from here on out. And specifically on the subject of illustration, I believe that Aurumek's artwork is a nearly perfect marriage of form and subject. And in order to explain that, I'm going to focus on just one. This one. You know, there are a lot of artists whose form very naturally fits the subject of their work. Jack Kirby is an obvious example where the highly energetic ink lines matched the intense action of the comics that he illustrated. Likewise, Will Eisner's sort of curly, lumpy, and beautiful command of the human form could not have been better fitted to his character-driven comic narratives, populated by a vast array of personalities. And this is what I mean by Aurumek's illustrations. The way he draws is ideally suited to what he draws. And I want to give you some specifics as to why I think that is the case. First of all, the lines. Many artists use ink, and by that I mean any sort of dark line that helps separate fields of color, because in a digital age, ink can mean a variety of different styles. But nonetheless, the small contour lines that separate things, that provide texture and sometimes imply shadows. You can look at a lot of ink work and place it on a continuum between shadow and contour line. I talk about this in my inking video. Most artists fall somewhere along this continuum. I tend to fall a little bit in the middle with my own work because I use a lot of contour lines in addition to a lot of shadows. Kelly Brack is an example of an artist who focuses more on shadows with the ink. That's another great Illustrator account you should follow as well. I'll put a link down there too. Aurumek uses mostly broken contour lines that clarify and organize the colors, and the lines provide just enough separation and indicate enough texture to add grounding to the world. But that does raise the question of, in what way does this make the artwork fit the subject particularly well? And rather simply, I would say that these small broken lines that don't really carry a heavy sense of shadow, they help reinforce a sense of scale. And scale is a big part of this particular fantasy world. When you look across Aurumek's works, there's a unique toy-like feeling that permeates these landscapes and villages. It's playful, and it's lighthearted, and it's quiet. The restraint used in line and shadow emphasizes these things because small lines, very simply, make place feel big. The smallness of lines makes it more possible as well to draw small figures with visible detail. And a small figure in a big landscape will always make the viewer feel like an adventurer in a sprawling new world. So we have the type of lines that are used, and we have the size of the figures within the landscapes. But my favorite thing that Aurumek does that fits together the form and the subject is much more subtle. In fact, it's shrewdly subtle. And it goes to these trees in the background. At least that is where I first noticed it. Aurumek includes small harmonies of motion within his illustrations, which quietly reinforce each other. It took me a while to even pin this down. It really only became clear to me as I was looking through these illustrations closely and writing this script, trying to figure out why so often these scenes feel as though they are moving. Here, it's obvious the tops of these trees are bending in the wind. Small leaves are cascading off, carried on the air. The combination of motion and particles makes it seem like I can hear the wind through those leaves while I'm looking. But then you start to notice the little reinforcements. The birds flying from left to right, just like the leaves and the treetops. The figure walking from left to right. The roll and slope of the hill looks like a wave carrying the rider to his destination. Even the shadow and the sunlight imply a movement from the upper left to the bottom right. There's a wonderful agreement to be found in these details, and it makes the world so much more than it would be otherwise. Not everything in the frame needs to be in this kind of agreement, though. In fact, it's probably better that some of these elements actually diverge away from that theme of harmonious motion. In this example, the trees and the slope and the cliffs head up and to the right, and the path even sort of matches the slope, kind of twisting along with it. But the grass is growing in the other direction, down towards the sea, providing that little note of variety, because harmony is both unity and variety combined. And that combination, carefully articulated in proportion, is what maintains the balance. I think that's one of the things that makes Argenta such an appealing world and makes Aurumek's illustrations of it a bit unique in a field of fantasy illustration that's extremely well populated, perhaps even oversaturated at times. It matches very well with this statement from his profile, homesick for a world that never existed. I think it very beautifully captures the warmth and the pleasantness of the worlds that we build in our head. I do longer videos about art and art theory. You can watch the one that I very recently did about Batman 1989. And I also do videos like this, talking about illustrators and artists who are working right now, people that you can support by following them and buying their work, which is a great thing that you can do with indie artists. I put links below for Aurumek, the Patreon, other artists that I mentioned. And then also you should like and subscribe here, because I want a little something. Especially if I'm going to keep making these videos, which frankly I'm going to do either way because it's fun. But pretend I'm holding them hostage. Hit the buttons. Thanks.